Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for another edition of our fortnightly IRENA Insights webinar series. My name is Karan Kochur, and I'm joining from IRENA's Innovation and Technology Center in Bonn, Germany. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, I would like to introduce IRENA and to our webinar series. IRENA is an intergovernmental organization with 168 member countries and another 16 in their accession process. We support countries in their transition to a sustainable energy future and serve as the principal platform for international cooperation, a center of excellence, and a repository of policy, technology, resource, and financial knowledge in renewable energy. And because our analytical work and our engagement with our member generates a lot of valuable insights, we're constantly looking for more ways to share these insights with you. And that's why we launched this webinar series, which we run every other week, usually on Tuesdays. We started in January 2020, and so far we have organized over 40 webinars on various topics. You can check them all on our IRENA events website, and the link to that will be in the presentation slides. We appreciate that there are many other longer deep dive webinars, but what we try to do here is keep these webinars short. They last approximately 30 minutes, which means that we cannot clearly cover everything, but the idea is to give enough information for you to decide if you want to delve deeper into the topic. And in our presentations, we signpost further resources for more in-depth information to help you do that. Next slide, please. So today, while you enjoy your coffee, tea, or bagel, we're going to hear from Celia Garcia Banus. Celia is the Program Officer for Policy, Gender, and Socioeconomics at IRENA's Knowledge, Policy, and Finance Center. Today, she will share insights from IRENA's report titled Solar PV, a Gender Perspective. But before I hand over the microphone to Celia, just briefly a few housekeeping rules, which I'm sure you're all aware from other online events. We're recording this webinar and we will post the recordings and slides on IRENA's events website within the next 48 hours. You are by default on mute, but if you have any questions, we encourage you to use the Q&A function during the presentation or in the Q&A section of this webinar. And without any further ado, let me welcome Celia. Welcome, Celia, to our Insights webinar series. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Karen. Allow me first to maybe remember a bit to those who attended the webinar a few weeks back on jobs, and give an overview of first what are the jobs, not only in solar, but in the overall renewable energy landscape. At IRENA, we have been working on estimating what is the actual employment on the sector for the last 9 years. And our latest annual jobs review estimate highlights that over 12.7 million jobs were created in the sector. 4.3 million jobs of those are in solar PV. So solar PV is the highest employer sector or in the technology in the industry, which is an equivalent to around a third of the total. But it's not only that it's a third nowadays. Our macroeconomic analysis also indicates that these numbers are going to keep on increasing and will become the most growing the most growing technology, with up to 14 million jobs by 2030. So there's plenty of opportunities in solar PV for employment in the next years. And in fact, along the value chain, from project planning to the decommissioning, solar PV offers employment prospects for individuals with training not only in STEM professional careers, but also in non-STEM, but still high-level qualifications, such as lawyers, and also for people with lower formal skills that can be leveraged from different industries, and including construction or other kind sectors with a minimum training. So plenty of opportunities of employment in this sense. And what is the status then of women participating? Women's share is actually lower in the overall renewable, in the overall energy sector. It is quite well known that the industry has been employing more men than women, and we conducted a survey to estimate what is exactly the number of women working in the field. And our results show that for the overall renewable energy sector, women account for about a third of the total, which is higher than what our estimates do for wind, which is around 21%, but and higher than the oil and gas industry, the traditional oil and gas sector, which also accounts for around 22%. Our latest survey on solar PV scores much better, with 40% of the workforce being women. But the sector is still below the 45.9% of women working in the overall economy. And not only that, it's also important to see where are these women working within the sector. And as you can see in the slide, compared to the previous analysis on the topic, women are still lagging in terms of the positions that they take in STEM careers, which is the lower participation. While on the contrary, administrative positions are quite well represented by women. But these administrative positions typically have lower salaries and decision-making authority. So it's important to differentiate and to know what exactly is going on in the overall sector. As you can see, in solar PV, in administrative positions is even beyond 50%, is 58%, which compares again to what the overall renewable energy sector is happening, with 45% of women being in administrative jobs, and the highest as well in the wind energy sector, with women accounting for 35%. In non-STEM technical positions, such as lawyers or human resources professionals, women account for 38%, higher than 35% in the overall renewable energy sector and 20% in the wind industry sector. And as I was mentioning before, STEM is the lowest participation, and in this case, STEM positions in solar PV are close to what was estimated for the overall renewable energy sector, with 32% of the total, compared to 28% in the overall and 14% in the wind energy sector. And finally, there's some jobs that are considered non-technical positions, but not including in the high-level technical background, which could include marketing, sales, distributions, product assembly or installations, which are typically from solar, particularly driven off by the off-grid solar PV deployment, where women account for 35% of this position. So it's interesting to see that these differences in between the different categories. But it's also interesting to see from our results in the solar PV sector that on-grid and off-grid results are not presenting significant difference, so we can assume that similar shares of women are in both contexts. Gender inequality is most evident in decision-making levels. It is well reported across the economy, in policy making, in governance, that women's presence of company boards is painfully low. And that makes the absence of female role models even more acute in energy fields, in energy-related fields. In fact, according to our wind energy survey, senior management only accounted for 8% for women, while higher management also were very low at 13%. Solar PV account a little bit better, with management being around 30%, but senior management falling again to 17%. This is again also below the average in economy-wide, where women are estimated to represent 31% of senior management positions, and above what management and senior management positions are considered on oil and gas, where women are accounted to be 13%. So there's a lot of work to be done in this sense. And it's not only what is happening in the global, it's also interesting to see what is happening in the different regions. So for example, the women's share of solar PV employment is smaller in Europe and North America compared to Latin America and the Caribbean, or Asia and the Pacific and Africa regions, where the share is higher. Interesting as well, analyzing what is the difference in these regions on the different positions that women hold. We can see that the spread between women sharing administration and in all other roles is mostly pronounced in companies in the Asia Pacific region. The heavy representation of women in administration explains why the region fares better in comparison to women's overall participation in the solar PV workforce. What about the activities? What is the different segments where women are contributing? As you can see in the slide, manufacturing appears to be the greatest employer for women with 47%. Other activities, which include consultancy companies, think tanks, academic and research institutes, education, training centers, financial institutions, governmental agencies, and marketing companies, follows with 40%. But unfortunately, other services or service providers, developers, or installers are really, really below, with only installations being 12% of women. This means that women still face a lot of challenges in the solar PV sector, and we wanted to know what exactly is driving this, what is behind. So our survey also included a set of questions to be analyzing exactly what is the situation and what are the challenges that women face. And these challenges can be simply because of their gender, and they're often subtle and very much linked to each other. So let's give an overview of what we analyzed regarding barriers to entry, retention, and advancement. In terms of barriers to entry, as you can see in the slide, the major barriers are identified to be a perception of gender roles and cultural and social norms, etc. In comparison, this is very much aligned with the previous surveys we were accounting for in the overall renewable energy industry and the wind industry. However, in contrast with these previous surveys, limited mobility is mentioned also as a major barrier. This could be reflecting the fact that the survey was taking place at the same time that COVID-19 lockdowns were going on. So maybe it was on respondents' minds, or maybe it's also the fact that a lot of the solar PV workforce are in manufacturing, which normally take the opportunities in cities and may require willingness to move, commute, or even longer distances for work. In terms of retaining of women in the solar workforce, the highest related barriers were related to fair and transparency processes, the lack of fair and transparency processes, and the lack of some family measures like maternity and paternity leave or flexi time available for workers. In this case, it's also very aligned with our previous surveys in the different industries, but it's interesting to see how barriers to retention were highlighted as the most important barrier compared to entry and advancement. In terms of progression and barriers to advancement, respondents highlighted again the social and cultural norms as the most relevant barriers, followed by mobility requirements and childcare, absence of childcare facility, gender targets, and workplace flexibility. An interesting and perhaps surprising outcome is that the perception of the glass ceiling for the solar PV was much lower compared to the other surveys that we have conducted, and this may be reflecting the fact that higher women are in higher management positions. Another aspect that we analyze and we consider is the gender pay gap. Gender pay gap is a multifaceted problem. First, there's women greater concentration in lower paying jobs, either because they hold a specific low wage jobs or because they work in industries that generally pay less compared to those that are mostly male dominated. But also women unfortunately face conscious and unconscious bias that can result in pay discrimination. And that this unfortunately happen for women that are not paid the same as men for identical or equivalent jobs. So to assess this perception, we have a set of questions. First, we wanted to see what were the differences between the perception of pay gap in the overall economy and in the solar PV. As you can see in the slide, that is there's a slight better performance in the solar PV that compared to the global economy. But it's still present, the fact that there's a pay gap. When analyzing, disaggregating these responses by gender, men perceive greater pay equity than women, which unfortunately is not a surprise, with 76% believing equity to exist in solar PV compared to 40% of the women sharing that perception. A similar difference is observed for pay equity in general, although again, perceptions of equity in solar PV are slightly better than compared to employment in general. To explore why pay gaps occur, respondents were requested to differentiate what was the case, and this is what you can see in the slide. It makes a higher rate of respondents stating that men are paid more in those categories that belong to those conscious and unconscious bias that I was referring to when describing pay gap. So it's an interesting finding to say and to compare why is this pay gap important in solar PV and in other activities, and why is men who are being paid more actually being benefited from being men because of the lack of common pay scale policies or practices or the differences in negotiation skills. However, respondents stating that women are paid more or that women and men are equally being paid were mostly oriented because of the difference in activities and the difference in seniority. So for all this, it's important to put in place measures and policies to ensure that women has not only a better access, attraction, retention, and progress, but the same opportunities than men. First and foremost, understanding the complexity of issues women face by raising gender awareness. Through gender awareness programs, solar PV companies can increase the general sensitivity, understanding and knowledge about the challenges that women face, while promoting the idea that the sector presents a lot of opportunities for women. Another measure, another category is improving national policies and removing restricting laws. Discrimination and inequality can be addressed by mainstreaming gender equality and women's empowerment across all policies and programs, including education, labor and property laws, etc. This protects women's rights and guarantees that women have equal job opportunities and receive the same wage for equivalent jobs as men. Ensuring that all parents are entitled to parental leave. Paternity leave can be help to fight the cultural and social norms that are often highlighted as the most important barrier. This way it promotes the equitable sharing of responsibilities in the future and shaping fathers' decisions about how to devote resources to childcare, household duties, or other unpaid job requirements. Solar PV is a sector with the unique conditions to empower women's entrepreneurship, especially in the off-grid context, so they can become financially independent while boosting efforts to bring clean energy to all. So measure some specific laws to ensure that women have access to finance and they have an entrepreneurship program can really benefit both the sector and for equality for gender. Another measure is establishing better workplace practices, policies, and regulations. This includes from gathering more gender disaggregated data, increasing transparency, particularly related to hiring practices. That could include, for example, the salaries in the job descriptions, the range. So there's also a way to fight the difference in negotiation skills, the promotions and equal pay, that way, again, eliminating the pay gap. Offering parental leave even beyond the national law, this is something that companies can support, and some countries, some companies are already taking on. And facilitating the flexibility arrangements, including hybrid work, telecommuting, remote work, condensed work weeks, flexi-time, part-time, job sharing, etc. And last but not least, forming networks and systems to support mentorship and training. Networking provides an excellent platform for career development and success by facilitating greater visibility for women, offering mentoring opportunities and professional connections, and even providing career opportunities, including internships. They also allow women to become role models, which is critical to ensure that the future generations see that it's possible, and to change also self-perception of women and increase awareness of the multiple opportunities that there are. Some examples of these networks can be for the solar PV sector. So, for example, Women in Energy Wise, that is a network to foster diversity and inclusion in all aspects. MESOL in Brazil, that is aiming for women in Brazil working in solar PV, or regional with examples like AMES in Latin America, and of course global with, for example, GWNet, Global Women's Network for the Energy Transition being one example. Beyond network, skills training and education is also critical and can help to level the playing field between women and men. Dedicating training programs can provide women with the skills and knowledge that they need to become competitive and confident decision makers, technicians, or educators in the solar PV industry. So as ensuring an access to education is really critical. So last but not least, and in summary, improving women's representation in solar PV is really critical and can help attain multiple SDGs, but also needs to be part of the broader objective. We have been speaking here about men and women, but diversity of the workforce as a whole can go beyond to include everyone's visions, talents, and skills. This means not only women, but also other minority groups. And the energy transition that is unfolding is really going to require a lot of different visions, different skills. So the more diverse the workforce is, the better benefit for everybody. Thank you very much. You can access all the publications, Solar PV and the previous ones that I was mentioning in our website, and I'm looking forward for your questions.
Thank you so much, Celia, for your presentation. You certainly covered a lot in a very short span of time, and I appreciate that you highlighted the jobs report on our previous webinar. It ensures that we have conceptual clarity, conceptual continuity with other webinars. I will ask the audience to take advantage of this time and use the chat feature to ask any questions and doubts they might have. We have already received a couple of questions, and they sort of allude to what IRENA wishes to or is planning to do in this field, in this topic next. So I think we can start with that, and while we wait for other questions.
Sure, that's actually a good way to promote also what is coming next. We also plan to do a new survey on the overall renewable energy workforce. As I mentioned, the first report was a few years back, so it's good to also see what has been the difference and to track what has been the progress, hopefully, if any. There has been a lot of things in between. There has been a pandemic, so that may have had an impact. So we want to go beyond and see not only what is the difference, but also try to get some more qualitative perspective on what has been going on in the last 5 years. Okay. And that's next on our agenda. And well, as you mentioned, we have been working on jobs. We have also different work streams, and we always try to mainstream gender in all our work. So more things will come integrated in the rest of our reports.
Okay, sounds good. We look forward to seeing what you publish next. Certainly a lot of information and interesting insights there. I think you mentioned a lot on what can be done to improve the situation. We have a few questions which ask about any regional insights specific to the European Union. If you have any insights on that would be good for the audience to know.
Yeah, so as I mentioned in one of the slides, in solar PV in particular, the European Union together with North America, because we aggregated the results of both regions, were a little bit lower compared to the overall and to the other regions. It's also fair to say, and it's a must to say, that there were no significant differences in the statistical analysis, but still that figure is important. Across the report, we include more data that, like, again, because it's publicly available, I would encourage anyone who has an interest, not only in Europe, but in any other region, to get a little bit more insights on this report and in the previous ones as well.
Okay, sounds good. There are a lot of questions which ask for more information on this topic. I would like to remind the audience that we will upload the presentation online with the webinar recording, and that will have links to the material that IRENA has published on this topic and topics related or associated topics. I think we are closing towards the end. I would like to thank you, Celia, for your time and sharing with us your knowledge and insights on your latest work. This was certainly very enlightening for me, and I hope the audience. I would like to thank the audience as well for joining in and listening to Celia. We received a lot of questions about this, and that certainly improves our work that we deliver. But we also hope that you learned something new. One last announcement that this was the last webinar for 2022, and we will return with more analysis from our work in 2023. I wish you a great rest of the day. Goodbye, and I hope to see everyone next year. Thank you so much.